Wonderful. I think we are live. So, good evening, everybody, and welcome and namaste to all of you who are here with us this evening. It's wonderful being back on our conversations, Helium Talk series. And I'd like to quickly introduce myself. My name is Ameeta Menon. I'm the founder of Helium, which is a wellness initiative. And my vision is to bring well-being to the community. We have been doing a lot of workshops and we have curated events for corporates and the community. I also run wellness programs for my employees in my own organization. And today, of course, we are here to have this wonderful conversation with a very interesting guest, Dr. Rahul Malushte. And the Helium Talk series is something that I started a couple of months ago. It is an interview series that explores the mindsets of the world's best health workers, the best healers, spiritual light workers, doctors, professionals, and entrepreneurs in the space of well being. So let me not waste any more time and let me introduce you to our esteemed guest for this evening, Dr. Rahul Malushte. Dr. Rahul Malushte is a homeopath and has been practicing for 25 years. In his quest to integrate homeopathy with spirituality, he has trained in healing therapies like past life regression therapy, inner child healing, rebirthing breathwork, and transgenerational healing. Since the last 10 years, he's practicing the integrated approach to wellness by complementing homeopathic treatment with all these healing modalities. He's also the founder of a conscious living and holistic healing center by the name of Wellnessence. So today, let me introduce you to Dr. Rahul. Wonderful having you here on the show, Rahul. And I'd really love to hear you tell us a little bit about what is homeopathy, how does it work, and also is it part of mainstream medical practice?
Thank you, Ameeta. Thank you for hosting me on this show. And it's a great pleasure to be sharing my experiences with all of you. And so let's go straight away to your question about homeopathy. So
Right.
homeopathy is a scientific healing modality. As you know, it has been around for more than 200 years now, and originated eventually the Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. So he came to attention by which usually used in treatment of malaria. So when he drank the extract, he found that he produced the same symptoms as malaria. So this was a very interesting finding that he realized that what produced the symptoms could cure the same symptoms. So because the China bark, the cinchona bark produced the symptoms of malaria, it could cure the symptoms was the conclusion which he came up with. And then he went on to prove many other plant extracts, and then he also used minerals. So homeopathy is basically a science which is based on the principle which is called as similia similibus curantur, which means likes cure like. So whatever a drug or a medicine is used is capable of producing the same symptoms which it is capable of curing. So this is done on healthy human beings, and the medicine we call it as drug proving. So each medicine is proved on a healthy human being. The symptoms are carefully noted down, and based on that we are able to arrive at a picture. We call it as a drug picture. So each drug picture or each medicine has its own personality. So each drug personality is you as a homeopath, we try to find out which is the most similar personality of the drug in the patient. So basically, when we many people might have heard about homeopathy, and they jokingly say that you आप बाल की खाल निकालते हो. The reason being that we tend to understand the person as a whole. So that is
Right.
where homeopathy comes to be seen as a holistic science and not just a limited science. So what we understand is the personality type, the physical makeup, the mental makeup, and based on that we select the medicine of the person. Now this medicine will help for all the complaints, uh, not just one single complaint for which maybe the person has come to the doctor,
Hmm.
but there are so many other ailments which also are there parallelly, and those ailments are also helped with the same medicine. So people ask, why do you give only one medicine? The reason being that the medicine does not work on the specific symptom. What homeopathy does is it stimulates the body's physiological mechanism in such a way that the body's functioning starts coming back to normal. Once the body's physiological function is restored, the body itself takes care of the illness. So the symptoms are taken care of the body. So not like the conventional system of medicine where
Right.
each symptom needs a particular medicine separately.
Medicine.
Like for example, you have acidity, you take antacids. You have a headache, you take a painkiller. That is not how homeopathy works. We work in a way that we understand the personality type, and once we understand the personality type, the medicine which is selected will help for all the complaints. So that is how the body starts rejuvenating and healing from within. Now, if we understand the spiritual aspect or the concept of disease in homeopathy, then what is proposed is that uh, the basis of what is understood as disease is not just physical symptoms, but an imbalance in the state of the whole being of the individual. So, what we understand and nowadays we talk as the soul or the spirit was seen as Dr. Hanuman as the vital force which governs the whole individual. So, till
Right.
the vital force is around, we are alive and we are, you know,
Well,
functioning
yeah.
normally.
Function.
The moment there is an imbalance in the state of the functioning of the vital force, it starts reflecting at the level of the mind, and then it also reflects at the level of the body. So that is how the illness is seen. It's not just seen as a physical imbalance, but it is seen as an imbalance which happens at the vital level of the vital force and is reflected at the mind and then percolates to the body. So, primarily, it is seen as a imbalance at that energetic level and not just at certain physiological level. So, though we talk about changes at the physiological level and then later on at the pathology, which is seen
Yeah.
in form of disease symptoms,
Mhm.
but what we see is that there is an imbalance at the energy level, and that is where the whole uh, correction needs to happen. And the homeopathic medicines which are used, they are also prepared in such a way that the potent energy which is there in the medicine is released. So it is understood that homeopathic medicines beyond the sixth potency do not have the molecular structure, but they only have the memory of that molecule. So this
Okay.
beyond the sixth potency, the Avogadro's number does not exist, but
Okay.
the memory of the molecule remains, and it is this memory which stimulates the body's mechanism. Now, considering the current scenario which we are talking about times of COVID, and we are talking about the
Right.
vaccine coming in. So
Mhm.
there is also a theory that homeopathic medicines actually simulate an antigenic structure to the body. So the body starts getting stimulated in a very milder form because the symptoms are very similar. So what
Mhm.
happens is when the body is already ill and is experiencing certain symptoms of the disease. Now, when the medicine is introduced, which is in a very refined and a very diluted form, the body immediately understands that, oh, this is a very similar antigen which has come back into the body, and it starts producing the right kind of immune response. So that is
Mhm.
where homeopathy scores. And recently, we must have heard about using a preventive medicine in homeopathy.
Yeah.
And when
Right.
many people took arsenic album or other
Right.
medicines,
Right.
the reason being
We
that
used
these
it actually. Sorry, we
yes.
used it in our organization. We used it right through the times. We made sure that everybody got doses of arsenic and mal. Yeah.
So it works very similarly to the principle of a vaccine,
Right.
because what happens is that if you have already taken the particular medicine, the body is exposed to that particular antigen in form of that medicine. The moment the actual antigen in form of the virus enters the body starts immediately producing the required requisite immune response. So it is
Mhm.
very similar to the principle of using a vaccine. Of course, that is not the case in all illnesses. This is only for infective diseases. But of
Right.
course, I explained earlier, in other illnesses, be it autoimmune disorders or psychosomatic illnesses, what happens is the medicine is only stimulating the body's immune function or the other physiological functions of the body so that they are restored back to normal. And naturally, once the body starts functioning in the right way, for example, if you understand thyroid, so nowadays you see a lot of hyperthyroid cases where the thyroid gland is not secreting enough thyroxine hormone. So people keep taking supplements, and the mainstream medicine tells that you have to take this lifelong because it's a
Right.
deficiency.
Yeah.
But with homeopathy, what happens is when you take homeopathic medicines, you are stimulating the thyroid gland in such a way that it starts functioning optimally. So the body starts secreting the thyroid hormone. As a result, the deficiency is taken care of, and you need not take the medicine lifelong. So that is how homeopathy works.
Right. So coming to my second and more interesting question, why isn't it a part, or is it a part of mainstream medical practice? So,
Uh,
and why is it that there's so much of controversy around homeopathy? I know that this is like a interesting question for audiences also. A lot of people have questions about, are we taking placebos? Are we taking, so many questions go on in the head. So would you like to just share your view on that?
Definitely, definitely. This is a very important question because considering the fact that a lot of claims have been made that homeopathy is only a placebo, homeopathy is not a mainstream healing modality. I believe that it's in India, homeopathy is definitely a mainstream modality because if you see the statistics, then I think about 40 to 50% people prefer homeopathy over any other system of medicine. Of course, not that everyone takes homeopathy, but in India, homeopathy is a very well acclaimed and acknowledged system of medicine. And so, also in other parts of the world, like for example, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, so people have acknowledged homeopathy as a mainstream. There was a point in time in the early 1900s, America had more homeopathic hospitals than allopathic hospitals, and which is a
Oh,
very
is that so?
interesting finding.
Yeah.
But what happened was, uh, over a period of time, when modern medicine started making advances in terms of the technological changes which happened. So the scientific advance which happened in the modern medicine system, that is where homeopathy could not keep pace with the allopathic system. Uh,
Mhm.
the reason being that we have the way in which homeopathy can be seen as a scientific method would be using a double blind trial, which is like a proof of this system working. So, any
Right.
scientific experiment or a research which happens believes in the process of doing a double blind trial. Now, the biggest hurdle in doing a double blind trial is that homeopathy does not have one standard medicine for a particular illness. Like, for example, if we talk about thyroid, then they have the supplement of thyroxine, which is taken. So,
Correct.
you give 100 people the thyroid hormone, 100 you don't give, and then you know that okay, this is the levels have improved. Yeah, the levels are not improved. So, you obviously say this works. But with homeopathy, all the 100 people who are being treated for the thyroid disorder may not need the same kind of medicine. Now, this becomes a biggest hurdle in terms of doing research. So, I cannot give a standard medicine to 100 people and say, okay, this is how homeopathy works. So, I will have to take the case details of 100 people, find out what their medicines are, and then give them the medicine and see over a period of time how the levels are improving. Now, this is where I think homeopathy could not catch
Short.
up with modern, fell short in proving itself. The second thing which I mentioned earlier was that the Avogadro's number does not exist beyond the sixth potency, and that is what was the reason why most people thought that this is placebo. There have been,
Mhm.
big
Right.
articles in very leading medical journals saying that homeopathy is a placebo because they did these trials, or they tried to find out whether the medicine molecules really existed in the potency. Or there was a time when they did a study on the milk powder which we use as a base for the medicine, and
Right.
they did an electrophoretic study, and they thought that this has steroids because
Right. Right. That's
the
another.
electrophoretic pattern of the powder which we use, the milk, the sugar, it's called a sugar of milk, and
Mhm.
the one which the steroids have was very similar. But when they did an advanced study, that is when they realized that the patterns are very different. So these were many of the things which created a setback for homeopathy in the recent times. But nonetheless, if you ask most of the people who have been taking homeopathy, they have immense faith, and because the moment you see the results with homeopathy, that is when you believe it. So it's see it to believe
Right.
it. The moment you experience what kind of change homeopathy can bring about, that is when you start converting to this system. So
Yeah. I mean, I think in our family and at least in my group and in the community that I am in, homeopathy is very widely used. So it's a for me it is extremely. I can't imagine my life without using any homeopathic medicine. So coming back to your the second question, it is on your past life regression therapy, and so I it's a very interesting and I'm sure audiences are going to love this segment of our interview. So I would like for you to share what exactly is past life regression therapy and how does it work, and also is it curative? I mean, does it have any healing abilities, and generally how does it work?
So, if past life regression therapy is, if you understand, the definition of it lies in the name itself. So, when we say regression, regression means going back in time. That's the literal meaning of the word
Right.
regression. So, when you go back in time, and in this case, you go back in time to an experience which relates to your past life.
Hmm.
So, when you regress back in time, you relive that whole memory associated with that past life. And the principle is that when you relive a experience, a memory, you are able to relieve yourself of the memory. So, what happens is by reliving it, you are releasing the emotional baggage which is associated with the whole experience of the past life. And when you release that experience, when you relieve yourself of the emotional baggage,
Emotional
that
charge.
that itself is a process of catharsis. Now,
Right.
as healers or therapists or counselors, many people would have realized that even when you are able to help a person release their emotional trauma by speaking out, by sharing their emotions, that itself is a big healing experience for them. The reason being that in most cases, and this is what most of us would have also experienced, that when we are in midst of a emotional charge situation, we are not able to see and relieve ourselves. We get confused. We tend to feel stuck in the same pattern and again. Whereas if somebody else comes to us with a problem, we are immediately able to give them a solution. The reason being that we are so involved in that experience that we are not able to detach ourselves. The moment we are able to detach ourselves and look at the experience, we are able to see where things need to be changed. So, this is exactly what happens in a past life regression experience, where you go back in time, you relive that memory, you release the emotional trauma, and what happens is after you relive that memory, you are able to experience the death in that past life. So you experience the death moment, and you experience yourself as the soul after the death of that lifetime. And as the soul, when you look at the whole experience in a detached way, you are able to understand, you review that whole lifetime, you're able to understand where the whole belief system began, where that pattern has got created in your life, and that allows you to then learn from that experience. So what you learn, the lessons you learn, those are integrated at the subconscious level. Now what is happening is, many times as counselors, earlier when I used to be a use counseling as a modality, what would happen is people would understand that yes, I understand this is my problem, I understand this is where get stuck. But when it comes to, dealing with the situation in that emotional moment, you still tend to fall back into the same pattern. In
Hmm.
Marathi they say karte hai pan vadat nahi. So you
Hmm.
understand, but you're not able to let go of that pattern. What happens is, because all of this is happening at a subconscious level, the lessons are integrated at the subconscious level. So that allows the whole experience to reprogram your belief system, the way in which you are looking at things. And once that happens, it allows you to change your perspective view of reality. So what we actually do in a past life regression session is, first we identify what are the patterns with which a person is trying to deal with. So what are
Hmm.
those limiting beliefs which make a person not uh, or feel stuck in their life, so which makes a person believe that they have no choice or they're feeling helpless. So once you identify the pattern, once you identify the belief, so that we call it as core beliefs, so identify the core beliefs. And then what happens is, all this is like a program in our subconscious mind. So when we relate with the subconscious pattern, and we are able to identify where is the origin of this pattern, and we are able to understand and release the beliefs which we are having, by integrating the lessons in the subconscious, what happens is we are able to look at life from a different perspective. When we
Hmm.
look at life from a different perspective, our perception changes. Our perception changes. We are able to see that there are much more choices which we have. Otherwise, we always feel that we have very limited choices, and so we remain stuck in the same rut. The moment our
Hmm.
choices open up, we are able to choose wisely, and that changes our reality. So, the basic principle is we create our own reality. And
Right.
when we are able to see that it is we who have been creating this reality because of the belief which we are holding, and when we heal that belief, we change our perception, we change our reality. So that is how past life regression is a healing modality.
Healing. Yeah. But
Yes.
we have people who don't believe in past lives. There are many people who have issues, but they don't believe in past lives as such. And then
Yes.
they've heard about it and they're very interested or they're curious and they want to
Yeah.
know कि क्या चीज है. And then they
Right.
come to you for a healing, and then they say we want to do a past life, but we don't believe in. We think it is more to do with imagination and
Right.
that process. So, how do you feel that even if you hypnotize? I mean, there is, I think, a brief hypnosis that is involved
Yes.
in this therapy. So,
Yeah.
do you feel that a person who doesn't believe in past lives, will also have the chance to heal? I think this is the important thing for
Yes.
people to understand also. So,
Yes.
if you can just
So,
throw some light on that.
right. So I'll give you a brief about how this whole thing works. And I will also share a very interesting case which we had.
Mm.
And so basically, when we talk about past lives, and people, yes, definitely come to us saying that, I don't believe, but if there were to be a past life, I am curious to know what it is. So
Exactly.
frankly tell them that, look, this is not something which you do out of curiosity. This is serious work. This is inner work. This is not something like a pastime where let me find out who I was.
Uh,
So, in most cases, then people do understand that if this is serious work, then they need to, follow whatever the steps are. The second thing, which happens in most cases, is people are skeptical that what will happen if I go back in time and if I remain stuck out there. What if I were
correct. Yes.
what if I was a wicked person? What if I was a beggar? Or what if I
Yeah.
was a rapist or something like that? And I will feel so bad about all these things. And the whole uh, reason being is because we are afraid of confronting that part of us which is hidden all this while. So, in such cases, what we do is we tell them, look, even if you don't believe in past lives, it is perfectly fine. Even if this is a story, perfectly fine. It doesn't really matter. We are not interested in the story. What we are interested in knowing is what we can learn from this experience. So if you learn from a story, the story becomes irrelevant. It doesn't matter whether you were a thief or whether you were a robber or whatever you were. But if you've learned from that experience, that is what matters, and that is what will help you to move further in life. And
Right.
then people ask, what if this is all my imagination? What if I'm cooking this story up, or what if this is something which I have seen in a movie or I read a book? So what we tell them is that, in case even if you think this is your imagination, why is it that only this specific story is coming up for you? And if you, like you rightly mentioned, the process of hypnosis, but in this process, you're pretty much awake. It's not like what we read in the books or in the
Yeah.
scenes
It's not
that
like
you're.
one of those, oh, I'm hypnotizing you
Yeah,
and
yeah. It's not that way. It's not like Mandrake, which you used to see that person is
yeah.
completely under the control of the hypnotist. That's not the case. You're very much aware of what is happening around you. You are able to hear the guidance of the therapist. And if you choose not to reveal certain information, it's completely up to you. So, but we also tell them that it's always better to share whatever you are experiencing, so that
Right.
you're grounded in that experience and you're able to release all of what you're experiencing, the trauma which you're experiencing. So, coming back to the point, when you ask somebody that, if I agree, if this is your imagination, why is it that only this story has come up? And even if you move back and forth on the timeline in that particular life, what happens is the story is very relevant. There are no mismatches in the information. The characters remain the same. If you're talking about imagination, or like somebody cooking up a story, you will not cook up such a relevant story. And at the end of the day, when you learn from that experience and you understand that this is where the whole uh, belief has got created, and you start seeing the changes, that is when
Right.
you start believing. Now,
Yes.
coming to the anecdote, the experience which
Right.
I will share. One of my students brother-in-law he is in the army, and he was a helicopter pilot in the army. So uh, he had come and he was sharing, saying that there was a time when I was like a daredevil. I did not care about anything, and it has so happened that now, since I have got married, I feel, and I have a daughter, I feel very scared that not what will happen if tomorrow I don't come back home. What if
Right.
if the helicopter is shot down, and I see every day few of my friends who have lost their lives in all this, and somewhere I am scared. I don't like to say this, but I'm scared of what is happening. And so I said, are you open to exploring what uh, is going to happen if we use this modality and try and find out where the origin of this fear lies? So he said, yeah, let's try. I am open. And then we started doing the process for him. So I guided him into a trance, and then he relived the life where he was a prince, and he was a very bold prince, very a daredevil prince who would always fight with his courtiers, with his father, and every time he would see this experience, he would say, "Oh, I don't think this is happening." And then I would further guide him, and then he would further tell the story
The
that
rational mind keeps popping up.
yes, the rational mind would keep popping up, and then he said, "Okay, now there is a huge battle which is happening, and I am in the battle, and I have killed many people, and at the end of the battle, I have won, but I realize this is such a waste of life." And he said, "But I don't think this is really happening." And then he would go on again. And then, because of all that guilt which he carried, he decides to become a monk. He gives up everything and he goes to the forest. And
Forest.
that is where he experiences a different way of life. And then again, he would say, "Oh, but I think this is all my imagination." And he would go on telling. So the whole story went on, unfolded. He learned his lessons. He could, uh, integrate all what he
Could
learned.
correlate it also to his life.
Yes, so there was a correlation where he realized that it
Right.
all came from the guilt which he was carrying from the past life. So though he had chosen to walk the path of a monk, but still somewhere the guilt remained, and somewhere uh, he kept feeling that what if this happens. So even after the whole process, he said, "Do you think this really happened?" I don't really think so. I said, "Fine, it's okay. So long as you have learned what
The
you needed
healing
to
has
do."
happened. Yeah.
I left it at that. He went away. He was posted somewhere up north, and I forgot about the whole case. And after about 6 8 months, I received a mail from him saying that I'm extremely thankful to you, because in the last 6 months I've realized that there has been a sea change in the way in which I have been looking at life. I've realized that where all those patterns were arising from, because even in this life he would always end up having arguments with his seniors, and being in the army it was very difficult for him. But he said that I realized, and I have become more patient, I have become more self-observant, that fear has gone. I don't have those panic attacks before I go on a sortie, and it has really changed my life. So even if he did not believe in past lives, and even if he did not believe in the whole process while it was happening, the change did happen, because at the subconscious level the changes were happening. So that's how it
Yeah.
works. Even if you don't
Wonderful.
believe,
Yeah.
it's perfect.
Lovely story and nice real life scenario. Which takes me to the question of asking you what actually triggered, uh, the process of integrating all these modalities, and even though you were a doctor of medicine, and then you kind of decided that you wanted to integrate the practices of homeopathy with past life regression and so many other modalities like transgenerational healing and inner child healing and stuff like that, which is purely coming from a very, slightly more holistic and I think more alternative type of healing processes. So, what actually triggered you to combine everything and integrate them? And
So, right since the time I joined medicine, uh, I always had this upbringing where a lot of spiritual values were inculcated in us when while we were growing up,
growing up.
and the idea was to serve people. Now, in this whole experience, I was working whilst I was practicing homeopathy in my clinic. I was also working with a charitable organization, and we had this mobile clinic which would visit about 20 villages in Murshi Taluka. And I was really having a good time, because I would enjoy reaching out to people, understanding their pain, helping them with their illnesses. We would also do a lot of medical camps. But all through, I always felt that something was missing. This is not what my purpose in life is, and
Right.
somehow that kept, pricking me and remaining at the back of the mind. And many years ago, I had also read this book, which is Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr.
By
Brian Weiss.
Dr. Weiss.
It's quite a famous book, and if
Right.
the viewers have not read this book, I would urge them to at least
Yeah.
read this book, because it really brings about a huge shift. So this was one book which one of my patients had gifted me in early 90 and in 99, after I started my practice in 95. And I read this book and I said, this is really interesting, and I need to experience this at least.
Mm.
So whilst this was happening, and in homeopathy also, when I was doing my training, further training, when I did my masters, when I did there is another membership exam which is part of seeking professional excellence in homeopathy. I realized that homeopathy works in a holistic way, and when we are giving homeopathic medicines, like I mentioned, homeopathy works at the level of the mind also. So,
Right.
whenever people come up with conflicts, emotional conflicts, and you are able to help them, because the medicine works at the level of the mind also. So, it brings about a more balanced state of mind, which allows you to look at things in a more clearer perspective, and that allows you to heal. Your patterns of relating with circumstances change, so stress goes down, and that brings about a relief in the symptoms also. Now, what would happen is, in many cases, people would feel better, but after a few years, they would come back with a similar problem,
Mm.
because somewhere the emotional state though had resolved, but because you go back into the same situation, you might uh, be healed, but your circumstances remain the same, and then the stress catches up again on you. So what I realized was, or for example, when I talked about counseling, that people would understand that yes, this is a problem which I am facing, but somehow I am not able to change the way in which I relate with people.
Mm.
Somehow they were not able to take responsibility of their problems. People will end up blaming situation, people, and would always be in that state where why me. So what
Right.
happens is, with this kind of a pattern uh, coming back again and again, I realize that there is something which we need to break this pattern, something which will help people take responsibility of their health. Because when you're a doctor, people come to you saying, I have this illness, please give me medicines and heal me, right? Nobody wants to heal themselves. So the
Right.
reason Wellnessence has the tagline is conscious living, holistic healing and conscious living.
Conscious.
Conscious living means that you live consciously, make conscious choices in your life so that you're able to heal yourself. You are your own
Right.
healer. That's what we believe. We, as healers, we are only facilitators who will help people to heal themselves. So you
Well
heal,
said. Well said.
right? So I was in search of a modality which would help the individual to take responsibility of their problems. And that is when incidentally, even after I'd read the book Past Life Regression by Dr. Brian Weiss, I never found somebody who trained in the pathy. But as they say, when the time is right, only then
Yeah.
you end up learning those things. So
Right.
I my teacher, Dr. Newton Kondavati, who's from
Yeah.
Hyderabad, and
Yeah.
it was a blessing in disguise. And I had actually gone there with an idea that I want to experience what past life regression is.
Yeah.
And by then, we were also working on a holistic model, which was in trying to incorporate the alternative systems along with homeopathy, so yoga, meditation, uh, using the right kind of diet. So all these things we were already trying to integrate. And then when I experienced past life regression, I realized that this is what I was looking for. So the idea to integrate homeopathy with spirituality, I was not able to find the bridge between the two, and I thought that past life regression was the perfect bridge, which helped to make people understand and take responsibility of their own lives, so that they are able to see that where they are contributing to their illness, what
There
is
is.
it in them that is making them ill. So if they are
Correct.
able to make a change in their perspective view, that is what will give you long lasting healing. So it's like a I would say homeopathy and past life regression are complementary to each other, because after you healed with past life regression, it's like a booster dose. Dr. Newton always says that if you want to go from Bombay to Pune, then you have the regular old Bombay Pune highway, then you have the expressway. So past life regression is like an expressway which
Expert.
will give you that immediate boost, which will help you get a head start. And then along with that, when homeopathy works, it helps to facilitate the process of healing faster. Or the
Correct.
other way, when you are on or you're already taking homeopathy, and you along with that, when you do past life regression, you're able to understand and consciously bring about a change within yourself. And then along with past life regression, then there were other modalities which came. So which like inner child healing is nothing but past life of the current
Correct.
life. Then there is transgenerational healing. If we believe in the principle of that, yes, there is genetic influence, so we carry illnesses through our genetic structure, then we also carry illnesses through the family beliefs. So
Right.
ancestral beliefs run through the whole family line. So when you
Right.
heal those beliefs, you're able to heal the family illnesses also.
Family
So
itself.
right. So you prevent the
So
illnesses.
when you say transgenerational healing, are you talking about the what is that thing called
Family
family
constellation.
constellation and things like
Yes,
that?
yes, yes.
Right.
So family constellation is another modality which also
Right.
is very similar. So all these modalities which we experience are basically they have very parallel philosophies, and it becomes very easy then to integrate these with each other, because they are complementary to each other. So the moment I had very briefly, I know we are running short of time, but I'll just share my experience when I did
Yeah.
my
Me too.
when I did my uh, training as a therapist. It was during my training program that I relived the memory life of a Eskimo, where I was the head of a Eskimo village, and there was a storm expected. So I made a choice that I will go and get supplies for a month before the storm hits the village. I moved out and traveled to get the supplies, but on the way back, the storm hit before I could reach, and the whole village was wiped out. And I, as the head of the village, went into severe guilt that because of me, my whole village had to
Right.
suffer and people had to lose their life. And I was crying like a baby during the session. And it was during the session that I learned, and the spiritual guides and masters helped me understand that we are responsible only for ourselves. We cannot be
Yeah.
responsible for anybody else. So you
Right.
we take our own responsibility. Our only
Correct.
responsibility is towards the evolution of our soul. And
Right.
that helped me to realize, because at that point of time I was at the cusp of a conflict where I was, like I mentioned, I was working with this organization, and I would always feel responsible for my subordinates. And I thought that if I am not there, they might not find the right direction. And believe
Mm-hmm.
me, I sent my resignation during from the workshop itself, saying
From the
that, sir, I
workshop.
my calling, and I choose to resign from the post, and I would like to explore this as my calling. And
Right.
that has really transformed my life. So I was able, if somebody had told me 6 months before that this is what you will do, I would have told them that you're crazy. But this was a huge shift which came about, and then with each new modality which I learned, I could see the change happening within me. Like Dr. Hanuman says that physician heal thyself. That is what homeopathy, the philosophy talks about. That
Yes. Yes.
unless you heal yourself, you cannot heal others. So I
Correct.
could see that shift happening within me over a period of time. And that is what made me realize that if it can help me, if we start integrating this with homeopathy, then it can make a huge impact on people's holistic well-being, not just curing illnesses, but helping people to live more consciously.
On a lighter vein, when I did my past life regression therapies, I did a number of them with Dr. Manjari Gokhale. She's from Mumbai. She's also a student of Dr.
Yes,
Newton Kunda.
yes, yes.
So one of the lifetimes I was called Charles. Okay, now I'm not getting into the story, but at home my family still calls me Charles.
Oh,
So
yeah.
in jest, so they pull my leg. They say, "How are you doing, Charles?" So anyway, coming back to, we don't have too much time, Rahul. So Dr. Rahul, so what we're going to do is I want you to speak a little bit about your work with animals, because I think that's something which fascinates me, and I would like to know what kind of work do you do, what mode of treatment you use for them. Do you work with homeopathy, or do you work with Bakla remedies, or what is it? I mean, is it because I use Bakla remedies with
Yeah.
animals and Reiki? So I
Right.
wanted to understand whether you kind of
So, primarily, I use homeopathy because the principle being the same, that we try and understand what is the personality type of each animal. So, though we believe that animals are lesser intelligent than us, but as I have studied over the years, they are very intelligent and they have their own personality, they have their
right.
own traits. So it helps to identify the traits, and so which one gets from the human of that animal, and based on that we select the medicine the way in which we do for humans. So that is what I was conventionally doing for many years.
Mhm.
One of my friends, being a vet, she would refer these patients to me. Incidentally, I wanted to be a vet when I was a child, but my father convinced me, and he said, first you become a human doctor, then you can also treat animals, and that is what eventually happened.
Happened.
Now, what happened was I realized that many times the humans were not very observant, or they would, give their own versions of the of what they thought their animals were. But later on, I learned about telepathic animal communication, and I learned it from Manjali Date, and I realized that this was a huge way in which I could communicate directly with the animal
Mhm.
telepathically, understand what it is that was ailing them, how was their personality, and that helped to bring about a different perspective to the way in which I practiced homeopathy for animals. So I could directly relate with the animals, take information from them, and prescribe. So that brought about a change in the way I got results also. So I could bring about a shift in the way in which I understood animals, the way in which their difficulties could be conveyed to the humans. So there are times when animals are actually mirroring their humans, and it is not because they need treatment, but they are trying to convey some message to their humans. So specifically, so in certain behavioral issues where the dog becomes very aggressive, the human comes and tells that my dog has become very aggressive, I need to treat. And then when you talk to the dog and you realize that the dog is only mirroring the human, so that the human realizes that there needs to be a change in their patterns or behaviors. And when you convey this to the human and they realize that, oh, this is really happening, and if they bring about a shift, the animal automatically starts improving. So you don't even need to treat them with medicines. Bark flower is something which I have not explored, but yes, they do help, and specifically so in cases where there are a dog or a cat is experiencing anxiety or certain emotional states through which, or traumas which they are passing through. I
Yeah.
also use intent healing along with homeopathy, which is very similar to Reiki, and
Right.
so there also we try to integrate homeopathy with energy healing.
So
So
you
that's.
work with different animals, or you only work with dogs?
No, no. So I have treated dogs, cats, turtles. Uh, I have a
Horses
parrot. I
and
treated my parrot, horses,
okay.
cows. And even so,
Okay.
we treat even plants with homeopathy.
Yes,
So,
yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, if you spray them with the homeopathic medicine, they do very well.
Wonderful. Wow. So, what a lovely evening and beautiful conversation. I wish we could go on. There are huge number of questions which have come up, Doctor. But before we go into the questions, we'll keep 5 minutes for the questions. But before we get into the questions, I want to announce that Dr. Rahul Malushte is doing a workshop in January at the Ananda retreat. It's a inner child healing retreat, and you can just take a minute to just quickly share what it is about in case people are interested. And
So, just the way I
then
shared,
go on to questions.
yeah,
Yeah.
just the way I shared about past life regression, inner child healing is nothing but healing the past of the current life. So, as children, we are very vulnerable and fragile, and we tend to experience traumas through the time when we are in our mother's womb, the birthing process, or as we are growing. Because we are not able to protect ourselves, that is why these traumas, these emotional experiences leave a deep impact on our mind, and we carry these beliefs. The moment we are able to release these beliefs, we are able to heal ourselves and make a change in our life. Now, in the retreat, we use not just regression as a process, but we use many other different types of processes. So we use clay work, we use art, we use dance form, music. We also have one-on-one interactions with each other. So we use different type of processes which help us to connect with various stages of our childhood and identify where the belief has begun, heal those beliefs, and that helps to bring about a change in the way in which you look at life and help to heal the child. Because what one believes is that the child within us is the most purest form and which is closest to our soul or our higher self. And if we are able to connect with that part of us, then we are able to align ourselves better at the level of body, mind, and soul. So that's about inner child healing.
Thank you, Doctor, for sharing the details. And for the audiences, we'll be sharing. We can. I think you'll find more details on his page. Wellnessence
Yeah.
a page on Facebook. I think you can find all the details. And some people want to understand whether children can attend the inner child healing. So if you want to share what is the age group or whatever, Doctor, before
So
we go into the
usually,
question.
right, this is not meant for children. This kind of healing modalities usually are done only after the age of 18, because what happens is till the age of 18, we are still in a process where our personalities are being molded. It is only after 18 years of age that the personality becomes more well formed and rounded. So children are not eligible for the inner child healing process. Nevertheless, we can use different other ways to heal childhood traumas in children. So we can use clay work, we use artwork. So
Art therapy, all that. Yeah.
art therapy,
Yeah.
clay work, or even story telling. So there are different ways in which you can identify childhood trauma and heal it in children also, but not through regression.
So with that, we are coming to an end. We are coming up with all the questions. Thank you for attending our talk series and wonderful audiences. Thank you very much for being with us today. Please stay for the question round. So I'm just going to be sharing the first question with Doctor. There's a question from Ashok Vasisht. Can homeopathy help with diabetes? If so, to what extent? Please advise. Is there some specific medicine, or is there one medicine, or
Yes. So, like I mentioned, homeopathy does help with diabetes. To what extent will depend on at what stage one decides to consult a homeopath or take homeopathy as a modality of treatment. If it's in the initial phases, then only homeopathy can help. We need not rely on any other medicines. But if it is a chronic illness which is on for 10, 15 years, then perhaps it is advisable that we take homeopathy along with whatever conventional medicines, allopathic medicines you're taking. And as time passes and as homeopathy starts working, then we can gradually taper off the allopathic medicines. But we have to understand that we cannot suddenly stop the allopathic medicines. The reason being that homeopathy works very differently from what allopathy does. Homeopathy only is working, like I mentioned earlier, at the level of stimulating the body's normal functioning. So, in this case, the pancreas, or in cases where people who are obese, what happens is insulin is being secreted by the body, but the peripheral receptors where the insulin gets attached and is used by the body, those receptors are blocked. So as a result, the body produces insulin, but we are not able to use it, and that is why the sugars go high. So homeopathy helps in reversing these blockages in the insulin receptors and helps to use whatever body insulin in an optimum way. So it works very differently from allopathy. Allopathy will bring the sugar down immediately. Homeopathy does not bring the sugar levels down immediately because it is working in a more holistic way, in a way that it helps the body to control the sugar levels. So it is not an artificial way of bringing the sugar down. It helps to stimulate the pancreas. It helps to utilize the insulin secreted by the body in the appropriate way, so that the body itself controls the sugar instead of us relying on medicines for controlling the sugar. So yes, it does help, but you have to be patient
Has to
and
be
you have to,
done, gradually done.
yes, yes.
So the same participant has another question, which is quite a funny one. I want to read this out. Uh, uh,
Can
Let me
PLR?
just. Can PLR be used to take me back in time so that I can get my hair back? He says. So
So, interesting question. Yes, I really would like to say that I have not done this with PLR, but in cases where hair loss has been a reason because of stress. So, what happens in hair loss is because we are tensed and we are constantly under stress and anxious, the blood supply to our the hair roots is cut off when the muscles in our neck and the scalp go into a spasm. So when the blood supply is cut off, that is what causes the hair roots to get destroyed, and that is when we lose our hair, and that it causes baldness. In one of the cases where we were treating an individual, he had migraine but had also baldness. He had not come to us for baldness, but while treating his migraine, as I mentioned earlier, it helped his baldness also. So he was able to he had regrowth of hair also along with his migraines improving, and the reason for his hair loss was stress at his work level. I have never tried with past life regression, but if you are interested we can definitely give it a shot.
I think you should take an appointment with doctor and try it out for yourself. Coming to the next question from Supriya Pujari. Is it possible that any maternal emotional wounds are self-created? In that way are we not discounting the emotional wounds given by others?
So it's a question which has contradiction in it,
Yeah,
but nevertheless, I will answer this question. Is
you have to
that
make.
wounds are when we talk about wounds being created by other people? Yes, uh, the stimulus is definitely given by our environment. It could be, in this case, like you're mentioning, it could be the mother who has been herself a wounded child in her childhood and so repeats the pattern as she becomes a mother. So yes, she has been a stimulus for us to heal ourselves, but the way in which we have perceived that stimulus which was given to us by our mother makes us responsible for creating that hurt within us. So the same stimulus, different people would respond in different ways, and it is your individuality which makes you perceive that stimulus in the way you do, and that is where our responsibility lies, of understanding what that stimulus has done to us, what it has triggered within us. So yes, when we do the inner child healing, we help to understand that in what way the environment has been a trigger for us. We are able to also release the emotions which we feel towards those people who have hurt us, because as children we are not able to express the anger, the hurt which we have felt by whatever people have caused to us. We are able to tell them, we are able to express our hurt, our dissatisfaction, our anger, our hatred. There is a process called as anger release, where you're able to release the anger and tell whatever you have felt about what the other person has done to you. But at the end of the day, after you have released those emotions, when you look back at the whole experience, that is when we need to take responsibility of understanding that it is something within us which has led us to see the things the way they are, and that by holding on to the anger or the grudge, we are only causing hurt or damage to ourselves. So releasing the anger helps us to rise above the emotions, and it is only through forgiveness that we are able to release ourselves and move further towards a more happier and healthier life. So people may be responsible in the way they have caused hurt, but the primary responsibility lies with us, where we have perceived in a particular way and the way we have reacted to that hurt.
Right. We have one more question asking about medicines to help with high BP from Manjeet Singh. So you want to just, I think,
I, the answer is similar to what we had about
for
diabetes. Yes,
diabetes.
homeopathy does help for high blood pressure also, but it works differently from allopathy. So it does not bring down the pressure the way allopathic medicines do. But like I mentioned, it helps to stimulate the body's mechanism, which is the natural way of controlling the blood pressure. Once you start with homeopathic medicines, and the homeopathic medicines start working, the pressure starts coming down, and then you taper off the allopathic medicines, and then eventually you will be able to be
Slowly
symptom
take
free
off.
and medicine free only on homeopathy, and eventually you can stop homeopathic medicines also. But all of this needs to be done in a very diligent way under the guidance of a homeopath.
Practitioner, yeah, homeopath.
Yeah, so what we usually do is we work as a team, the allopathic doctor as well as the homeopathic doctor, we work as a team. And whenever the person starts improving, I refer the person back to the allopath. They decide that now it's time to reduce the dose, and then the doses are reduced.
Yeah. So, doctor, there is this feeling. I mean, there are some doctors that are comfortable to complementary stuff. I'm talking of allopaths, but there are some doctors who are non-committal. They'll say that "आपको जो करना है करो." So, so how does one handle that? I mean,
So
quickly, in a quick. We don't
yes,
have too
yes,
much
yes.
time, so we
So
just yeah.
I know, I know. So it's primarily basically the kind of belief which you have in the system. Even if the doctor says "आपको जो करना है वो करो," if you are seeing the results, if you are seeing that you are getting better at all levels, not just at the level of your physical symptoms, but you're also having a general feeling of well-being, then in that case, it is always better to trust your intuition and your inner voice, that what is right for you. At the end
Yeah.
of the
No,
day,
the main question is, does it work? I mean, can you take both and does it work? Like, there are things that you are not supposed to mix them and that kind of stuff. So I think
uh,
sometimes people are worried about that also.
yes, so it does work, and specifically so in the case where people are on medicines for a long time, allopathic medicines, we need to respect that yes, that system has helped you till this point of time to keep the illness under control, but they are not curative. The main thing is we need to understand that what that system of medicine is doing is not curing your illness, it is only controlling the symptoms. So the symptoms are kept under control, so we feel that we are symptom free, but the underlying pathology, for example in this case diabetes or blood pressure, the symptoms, the blood sugar is under control, the blood pressure is under control, but slowly in within the organs are slowly showing changes, so the end organ damage is happening. Whereas when you're on homeopathy plus allopathy, then homeopathy is working in such a way that it is not just helping you to cure and control the symptoms, but also preventing any further complications. So that is the benefit if you're taking both homeopathy and allopathy together. And over a period of time, when you taper and you move down completely to homeopathy, and then if you're symptom free, stop it completely.
So this would be our last question for the evening. We'll just take this one from Preeti Kher, which says, "Great talks, doctor. Where do you practice? And if one wants to do a regression session, she wants to come to you for a regression session. So you will get the details. We will post it on the links, both Facebook and think we will share the address of Doctor's Center. I think Wellness Center, which he has in Pune. Doctor, you want to share any inputs on this? Okay, this.
I practice on Sayoke Bihar Road, and like Ameeta said, that you can get the details from the Facebook page which is there. You can also contact us through the Facebook page, and we would be more than happy to help you out in whatever modality you decide.
Right. So thank you everybody for, I think we have one more last question. Do animals respond better to homeopathic medicines and why? From Preeti Panemangalore asks. So
Yes,
I think with this
animals
question
do
we can just end.
respond very well to homeopathic medicines, specifically so because animals, and in fact, while we are communicating with animals, many animals do say that they would prefer homeopathic medicines because they are more natural. So, and the way in which homeopathy works, they definitely respond very well. So, I have seen cases of beagles with chronic skin illnesses, with severe infection, responding very fast with homeopathy. Whereas they have been under allopathy for many years, but they have been able to only control the infections. The only reason why people feel homeopathy is slow is because they come to homeopathy at the fag end when
At
nothing
the
is
end
helped.
of
Right. So if you've been suffering for 5 years and you expect that within 1 week you should start getting results, that is next to impossible. So you have to give that much time because you're dealing with a chronic illness. Whereas in case of acute illnesses where somebody has a fever or a cold, then even in those cases homeopathy works faster. In fact, it works faster than other system because it is the body which is responding to the infection, and within 2 days you will find that the response is there. So yes, homeopathy works faster with animals as well.
With that, we'd like to close this evening's talks with Dr. Rahul Malushte. It was a wonderful evening, had a really interesting chat with so much of stuff that you've shared and very interesting case studies and inputs from you, Dr. Rahul Malushte. I wish you all the very best for your all the work that you're doing. I think we need more and more people like you in our community. And for our audiences, thank you for being with us. And do watch out. I'll be coming up with another interesting chat on 28th of January with a calorie pilot and a Muay Thai expert from Kerala. So do watch out for the interview. It's going to be very interesting. And good evening and namaste.
Thank you so much, Amita.
Thank you, Rahul.